right, well, thank you everybody for coming. This class is, we're going to go over some general introductory information about essential oils, and then we'll talk specifically about thyme essential oil and some benefits that you can use thyme to help you with in different ways that we can use in a day-to-day application. So thyme is a perennial herb. It grows really well in Oklahoma. There are several hundred varieties of thyme. When do you know a number on the number of varieties of thyme? I mean, it's literally one of the most hybridized and varied herbs that there is out there. And each different variety of thyme has some of its own properties. So we're just going to focus on some of the more general properties of thyme that are common through all the different plants that you'll run into if you're working with thyme on a regular basis. So it's part of the mint family, which isn't something you normally think of with thyme. It doesn't smell minty like a lot of the other things that we classically think of as mint, but mint is actually one of the largest herbal families that you're going to run into. So basil actually falls into the mint family. Peppermint, spearmint obviously fall into the mint family, but there are a lot of different things that when we're cooking we wouldn't qualify as a mint. But what's really interesting to me is last week we did a really fun game at the farm family night on Friday, and what the oil that most commonly tripped people up was basil, because people kept trying to classify it as peppermint. And then when they smelled peppermint, they got the distinction, but they couldn't understand why they were getting so confused. Well, it's because it has some of the qualities of being a mint. So when you smell the thyme, one of the things you'll notice is we're going to use peppermint for a second here in a minute, and then we're going to smell thyme not too long after that. And I would imagine you'll pick up some of the similar notes in the two oils when you smell it after you think about it. So it was used as a sacred oil in ancient Egypt and ancient Greece. In Egyptian culture, it was used as one of the embalming oils when they were creating mummies, which is pretty cool. And in Greece, it was used as a ritual incense, essentially, when they were working with different temporal functions and things like that. And then in Rome, it was used to flavor wine, of all things. So I'm going to try out something different. You can try some thyme wine, see how that comes together. I looked for some really quick and easy thyme recipes to work with, because what I like to do sometimes is we'll make something. When we did the lavender class, we made lavender lemonade, which is a lot of fun. Thyme is a pretty strong flavor, so there aren't a lot of quick make it up eatery things. There are a lot of diffuser blends that include thyme, but those aren't as fun to make in the class, so I didn't bring a lot of recipes. But if anybody wants me, I can share them on the class for people to pick up different thyme blends and things like that that you can use. So for those of you who aren't familiar, an essential oil is a plant-based aromatic compound, and they are either going to be steam distilled through a couple of different varieties of steam distillation, or cold pressed. And the oil that we're working with today, thyme, is going to be a steam distilled oil. Most of the time when you're working with a cold expressed oil, it's going to be a citrus that's coming from the rind, with a couple of specific exceptions. But thyme is a steam distilled oil. It is great to use in a couple of different ways. So one of the most common ways that you can use essential oils is aromatically, and that's probably the way that most people are familiar with. So while I talk about the functions of essential oils, what we're going to do is we're going to take this peppermint, and I want you to take one drop in your hand. So you're going to hold out your hand, you're going to dip one drop, which is just a little tricksy. You got to be really careful. See, I got two, so I'm going to share with Greta.
Okay.
Because two is one too many. Okay, and then I'm going to have you rub your hands together like this. And then we're going to breathe it in from our hands. You just cup your hands on your face. And I would start off a little further away than you think that you're going to need to. But see how close you can get. And that'll wake you up pretty quick. Clear out your sinuses. Peppermint is great for alertness, which actually is something that it has in common with thyme. So when we pass our thyme around, that'll be another thing that we're looking at. One of the most common uses for essential oils is aromatically. So what's interesting to me about that is when we think of how the essential oil functions with the plant, it's not something we think about in the plant functionality. So what essential oils do for plants before they're distilled is they act as the environmental interface between the plant and their environment. And so they're very sensitive chemically to the environment that the plant is in. So for example, lavender, one of its functions, the essential oil in lavender helps protect lavender from the sun. It's a full sun plant. And so when you're working with lavender essential oil, it can help us with sun health as well. So when you pass this around, people can just smell it out of the bottle. This is lavender. It is relaxing. It's one of its aromatic properties. But there are aromatic properties that function as a plant as well. So it attracts pollinators, typically, particularly the floral oils are used to attract pollinators. There are also oils on the leaves or on the stem that repel predators. So one of the other things that we can use essential oils for is a bug repellent. And there are actually some really great essential oil blends that you can get. I'll grab one real quick. Since it's that time of year, this is a pre-mixed blend of essential oils that's specifically formulated for bug repellent, which is another property that thyme has. Thyme is also a really great repellent oil that we can use ourselves. There are some others that are a little better for the bugs that we're working with around here personally that we're less happy with, but just if you have time and you don't have something else, it can be a great repellent oil as well. So those are some of the aromatic properties when you're working with plants. Another way that we can utilize essential oils is topically. So topically, you can utilize essential oils to help with irritations on your skin. Frequently, lavender is great for that. Thyme itself is very cleansing to your skin. So if you're looking for a natural skin cleanser, thyme can be a good choice for that. I'll pass it around now. People just smell it. Okay. When we use oils topically, there are a couple things you want to keep in mind. First of all, essential oils are very potent. When we're distilling essential oils from a plant product, we're typically looking at, on average, around 100 pounds of plant matter to get a volume of essential oil. So lavender, it's 100 pounds. Is it 60? Okay, it's 60 pounds of plant matter to get 1 pound of essential oil, roughly. It's a very generous plant. It actually produces a lot of oil per volume. When you're dealing with a lot of the floral oils, like rose is 5,000 pounds of petals to get 1 pound of essential oil. So the exchange rate, if we want to call it that, depends a lot on the plant, and it depends a lot on the distillation process. One of the things that's really important about that is you want to make sure that the company that you're getting your essential oils from has a very strict quality control measures in place for their distillation process. Because just like you can overcook vegetables, you can essentially overcook your essential oil as well. So if you distill it for too long, if you distill it at too high a temperature or too high a pressure, you can break down those volatile aromatic compounds that are what create the essential oil's potency and impact how well it can be used. So one of the pieces of feedback we get from people pretty regularly is, I've tried essential oils in the past and I haven't had consistent results with that. Well, what's frustrating to us as consumers, particularly in the United States, is there aren't a lot of production standards in place for essential oils at a national level. And so it can be very inconsistent because there aren't guidelines that those plants are held to when the oil is produced. It's only going to be the company's production that is in place for that. And some larger companies that do kind of mass market distribution, their grocery stores and things like that, don't use just one supplier. So they're purchasing essential oils from a variety of different producers that may or may not all have the same standards in place for producing that essential oil. Okay. When we're using them topically, you can use them neat, which is you just take the essential oil and you apply it directly to your skin. If you have sensitive skin, you want to be kind of cautious with that, but in general, an oil is going to be fine if you're using it on your skin, unless it's noted on the bottle that you need to dilute it. So thyme is one of those oils that you're typically not going to use neat. It's not as hot as, say, an oregano or a cinnamon, but it's still pretty potent. And so the other way that you can use them on your skin is you can dilute them with another carrier oil. And a carrier oil can be anything from olive oil, if you have really good quality olive oil at your house, all the way to something like a jojoba oil or a coconut oil. And coconut oil is really popular with people who use essential oils on a regular basis because it is the plant oil that is the closest to our skin oils. So it absorbs very quickly, and it absorbs without leaving a lot of greasy residue if you're dealing with a high quality coconut oil that hasn't been cut with anything and is a fractionated coconut oil. Fractionated for coconut oil just means that it's been put through a centrifuge and the proteins have been taken out. So it's just the oil without any of the pulp or the meat left in it, which is what causes it to solidify when we're cooking with it. So you can use the same oil that you cook with for coconut oil application. It's going to be a little more greasy on your skin. You're going to smell a little more coconutty after you're done because it's still got some of the coconut meat in it. But it will still absorb and it's still really good for your skin as well. Okay. The last way that people sometimes like to use essential oils is what's called internal use. And there are a couple of varieties of internal use. The first one is literally just taking it, putting it in a gel cap, and swallowing it. Okay. If you are going to choose to use essential oils internally, one of the things you really want to pay attention to is the brand of oil that you choose to do that with. Because there are a lot of production processes that are not monitored tightly enough to ensure that contaminants are not getting into that production process. So you want to use an essential oil that is labeled for internal use if you're going to use it internally. Because what that means is that the company has gone through the process of ensuring that they are confident with the quality of the product, that it doesn't have adulteration going on, which can be anything from adding a similar oil. One of the most common ones for adulteration is cinnamon. Cinnamon bark oil is very expensive to produce. And cassia is like a cousin, it's a different type of cinnamon. And it's very common to dilute red cinnamon bark with cassia because it's so much less expensive. That's not going to hurt you in that situation, but there are other times when people might use a synthetic to dilute. Lavender and wintergreen are two of the most commonly adulterated essential oils out there on the market, and almost universally they're diluted synthetically. So they'll take particular elements. For wintergreen, they take turpentine and they isolate chemical elements out of turpentine and then introduce them into a smaller batch of true wintergreen oil to extend it, essentially. Thyme is really interesting when it comes to adulteration because thymol is one of the few molecular structures that doesn't have an alpha and a beta style. There's it's called chirality to the molecular structure, and it's kind of like having a left hand and a right hand. So in an individual plant, you're only going to see one type represented. You'll either have a left hand or a right hand when it's naturally grown from a plant. Synthetically, we can't control that. So when something's synthesized, it's going to be 50-50. So whenever they're doing, it's called a chiral gas chromatography mass spectrometry test, they can actually see the chirality of the elements that are in there, the chemical composition of the oil. But thyme is a little bit trickier, so they have to do some other things like carbon dating and testing and stuff like that to ensure that they haven't introduced petrochemicals or other synthetics into the oil to make sure that it's pure. So The reason I mention that is because there's a lot of discussion in the essential oil world about whether oils should be used internally or not. And a lot of it really at the end of the day comes down to ensuring that you're getting what you think you're getting. In the United States, the only thing that governs essential oils is labeling laws. And I can say that something is 100% lavender if I put 1 drop of 100% lavender in that bottle. The rest of it could be coconut oil. The rest of it could frankly be gasoline. It could be anything. They don't have to include it because it's not the active ingredient that they're marketing. And so it makes it very difficult for us as consumers to be able to make a determination about an essential oil product, which is where the process that oil goes through comes into play. So doTERRA is the company that my husband and I choose to use for our oils in our home because they have a really stringent quality assurance process called CPTG, which is Certified Pure Therapeutic Grade. And it's a 6 to 8 step process depending on the oil. So for example, Thyme is one of the ones that gets the carbon 14 dating. They don't do it for every single oil, but they do it regularly for oils that have particular types of adulteration. And they test it with an external laboratory that's an independent certified testing facility. Then after it passes those tests, it's brought in to the company where they test it again. It goes through the bottling process and they reserve different portions and they bottle it they test it during the bottling process and they test it at the end of the bottling process. And they retain a sample from each run of the oil and it's numbered, which is pretty cool. So when you look at the essential oil bottle from doTERRA, it's gonna give you a number on the bottom. And that's the run for that particular bottle of essential oil. And they keep a sample of that on hand at the lab so that if they need to do any comparative testing with a particular bottle that you have something happen with or have a question about, it's available for them to be able to produce that if they need to. The other thing that you're gonna see on there that people have had questions about is on oils that are marked with a supplement facts label. That's the way you can tell if they're able to be used internally, because they're gonna have a supplement facts label on there. They're going to have an expiration date on the bottom. Now, a lot of people get confused because essential oils don't expire very frequently. They last literally for years and years and years and years and years.
Outside of citrus.
Outside of citrus oils, which have a 1.5 year to 2 year shelf life. However, in the United States, if you label something with a supplement facts label, the FDA requires that you put an expiration date on it to be able to carry a supplement facts label. So there are a lot of people who get confused because they're like, well, I thought this essential oil would last forever. And there are actually essential oils that they have pulled out of the pyramids and tested and they're still viable chemically that were put in tombs with mummies and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. But they were sealed out of the sunlight in a consistent temperature with a cold, dry place, right? So you have to make sure that they're preserved properly for them to last that long. And we haven't had any essential oil bottles that last that long because we use them a lot. So it's important to understand when you're looking at that labeling how it impacts your decision on what you're going to get. So, does anybody have any questions about essential oils in general or Thyme in particular? Nothing? Okay. Are there any online questions?
Nope, not at this point. Got a couple viewers though.
Good.
So what all does it use for?
So Thyme, just to recap, it's a great question. It promotes alertness, primarily when used aromatically. So it's great if you're trying to study for something. You can use it if you're driving and trying to stay alert. If you're going to use it in a diffuser, you want to get a diffuser that doesn't use heat, because applying heat to a therapeutic essential oil can change the chemical properties. So most of those are going to be either vibrational or pneumatic, or they're going to have an air blower where they're literally blowing air through the oil to pick up the molecular structure. Or you can do what I call nature's diffuser, which is what we do with the peppermint. We put it on our hands and rub it together and just breathe it in. That works. Or sniffing it out of the bottle is using it aromatically too. It supports a healthy immune system. which is one of the things we didn't get into a lot. Thyme has been researched a lot for immune support. And I would really encourage you to go on to pubmed.gov and check out all the research that's been done with Thyme, because it's astounding how strong it is as an immune support tool. It's got a lot of versatility because of the complexity of the combination of chemicals that naturally exist in the essential oil, which makes it great for supporting our immune system against things that give us trouble. It's cleansing for the skin, so it's a great skin cleanser additive, and it naturally helps to repel insects. Are kind of its main aspects. Yes, a lot of people will use it in household cleansers because of the immune support qualities that it has. So it's a really great cleanser because of that as well. Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of natural commercial cleaners that thyme is the primary active ingredient. Right, it just depends. Most of the people that I work with prefer citrus. They like the citrusy smells, but thyme is really great. Orange is great. Lemon's great. It's a good question. Any other questions? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. I have some other stuff if people want to look at it for resources.
What's the next class?
Thank you for watching. On the first community night in August, we're going to have basil essential oil. So that is our next class.
We got plenty of basil in the garden over
We
there,
have lots
so
of basil.
we can definitely
We'll have
use that
plenty
as a
of discussion
demonstration.
of basil as an herb and how you can grow it and utilize it from an herbal perspective too for that class.